you and I have been extremely intentional to never associate a negative emotion with sex.
Yeah.
I don't ever want you to be in a negative emotional space towards me having sex and then subconsciously associate that emotion with the act of sex and bringing those two things together to where you eventually start over time despising sex.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Like a really bad mom.
Quote unquote, I'm tired of people in my race, so I need to find me somebody white. This is how I knew that Brian
Don't do it.
was going to be a great physical partner.
Don't tell that.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Let's Get Deep podcast. We have conversations about our life. Most people would never.
They probably would never, but we gonna go there today.
We're going to go there today. We actually have a very interesting conversation.
And it's a topic that a lot of people shy away from. And what we have found personally is that there are so many married couples that do not talk about it.
No.
And that is...
I was going to say S-E.
Let's talk about sex.
I know we have two different songs. You have a different song than I do when I
That's
say
okay.
sex.
We can both have a
What's
song.
the first song you think about when somebody says, let's talk about?
Sex.
No,
What?
what song?
I
What
have no
song do you
idea.
think about?
I don't know.
You do. You just had a song.
I did?
Yeah, you said, let's talk about. That's not a real song?
That's a real song.
Yeah, what song is that?
I have no idea. I just know that part. That's the only part I know.
Mine is S-E-X, Mama Secret. Daddy's gonna go crazy when he find out. You remember that song?
I have no
Spady
idea. We grew up
found
very differently, so I don't.
I don't know
have
that.
a
I gotta
clue what
remember that
is.
song. I don't know what song that is.
I just remember
but-
my song was in Pitch Perfect. That's all. So.
Oh, let's talk about sex, baby.
Oh yeah.
That. Oh my goodness. You know that song.
I do. There it is. There it is.
But yeah, this is something that I think nowadays a lot of people do talk about it, but not in the way that I feel we talk about it. And I'm not saying that we're super different, but I do feel the way that we view sex and how I will say how I have conversations with women is very different.
Yeah, I think our approach, our mentality behind it is very intentional. And we have digging conversation. I mean, like everything we talk about, right? The podcast is named Let's Get Deep for a reason. Our friends make fun of us for making everything deep, but we do. And I'm just going to say this, it served us well.
So I had a conversation with Brian, and we actually had my brother and sister with us. And I saw this reel that talked about different kinds of people when it comes to sex. There is one person that they feel so connected, they feel so intimate and just intertwined with their partner that they want to have sex. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other person that feels they aren't feeling connected, and to feel connected, they have sex. And I actually was going to pose this question to Brian, but we were like, let's actually talk about this on the podcast. What are you? Which one are you?
I don't like to be categorized. So, of course, me being the complicated man I am, I'm going to say I'm a hybrid.
I do think you're a hybrid.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be overly complex, but I do think I'm a hybrid. And the reason is because this is how I see the role of sex for me sometimes as it relates to emotions. I do not want to have sex when I'm not emotionally connected. When I'm emotionally disconnected, it's just not appealing to me necessarily. Mm-hmm. But sex does create an emotional connection for me. It does strengthen it, I'll say. It doesn't create it. Sex typically does not create, because we have had very few times, but we have had sex when we were not emotionally connected. Mm-hmm. And in that, I don't feel emotionally connected anymore at the end of it.
Yeah.
What it does help me is if I feel a little connected, maybe we had a rough patch and we had an argument or whatever, but we worked through it and we're not mad at each other, we're not upset, but now we're in the process of recovery. As long as I have an emotional connection at some level, sex then strengthens that connection and it brings me closer to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't feel I'm too far from you. I think you thought I was kind of far from you in that.
Well, let's talk about what you are.
I think that I don't think you're a hybrid. I think you are more wanting to be connected than you think.
Break that down. Let's talk about you first.
Okay, well,
What's the difference? What's different between us? Or what's the same?
I think what's different is that your level of connection is just, it doesn't need to be as connected for me.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. But my level of connection, I just need a little bit more than you. It's not too much. It's just a little bit more than you.
Yeah, I definitely think that you need a higher level of emotional connectivity
A little
to
higher.
want sex.
I think
not
a little
to
higher.
have sex, but to want sex. Because there's a difference. You are someone who will give it to me if, and I hate, that sounds weird. Give it to me. Not like you're sacrificing yourself for me, but like you will have sex if you feel that I need it or want it, and there is enough connection, but you have a higher standard of what it takes for you to want it. Does that make sense?
Yes. And here's the thing. I just like last night, I will give this as an example. I wasn't feeling like having sex, right? But
I didn't know that. I thought we were good.
no, I mean, I was down, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm about to, like, I'm ready for it.
Yeah, you weren't like
I was
horny.
tired. Yeah, I was tired. I was like, okay. I was like, you know what? Yeah, we could do it. But what you do during sex, I, at this point, time and time and time and time and time and time and time again, I'm not wanting it. I'm not wanting it in the beginning, but then during, it starts to shift.
It is hilarious watching you go through that process and try to fight me. And it's not like fighting me like...
I'm about to say,
no,
I do
it's not like
fight.
fighting me, but it's like, yeah, no, I'm down. And I'm like, you not feeling it? Like, you know, and you'll be like, no, it's cool. And I'm like, I'll get her there. And it's not like confidence in myself. It's just, I know that you are like a mathematical formula. If I put in the right equation, the right formula, the outcome is going to be the same every time.
That it is true. And and here's the thing. I'm a person that I don't like the same things all the time. If you do it too many times, I'm done. But what I appreciate about you is, and actually, let me backtrack, because I don't know if you guys heard of tonight's conversations, but tonight's conversations had a woman who was talking about, like, she's with this guy who actually gets turned on by pleasuring their person. And I thought that was so weird, because I feel like you are the only person that I've been with, but you thoroughly enjoy just pleasuring me. Like, you could literally be okay with just pleasuring me. And so when it comes to me feeling good after sex, like, that is literally your goal. I feel like is that you want me to feel like the utmost pleasure.
If I can be honest, I don't want to disrespect anyone. I don't want to demean or condemn anyone, but I personally find it so strange for someone to have sex and not want their partner to be completely pleased. Like, that's strange to me.
It's strange
personally,
to me.
Right? And again, our only experience is with each other. We were virgins when we met, and we have only been with each other. So when I look at our sexual experience, it is obviously limited to that, which it's supposed to be. That's how God created it to be. But I just can't imagine being with someone whose goal is to not make me happy, and my goal is not to make them happy. That's like just not sex to me.
I think the problem that a lot of people have is they think they know how to. And I think the other side is that women do not speak up about that.
Okay, let's talk about that, because I have someone who is no longer a friend of mine who was a good friend at the time. And he was sharing, you know, at the time he was getting it in with his girl, and he was confident about his abilities.
Yeah.
He was telling me, you know, bro, I'm blah, blah, fill in the blank. I put it down, and you heard a very different story.
Very different story. Very different story. And I'm not going to say who, but it was a very different story. And I was
like, how did we get here?
How did we get here? But you know, when you're young, they were young. You were young. You don't know how to, how to ask the questions. This is how I knew, y'all. This is how I knew that Brian
Don't do it.
was going to be a great physical partner.
Don't tell them. This story always cracks me up, but it's so embarrassing.
Okay, so Brian is very type A. He's very detailed. When we were young, Brian kissed me for the first time.
It was magical.
It was really quick because you're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing?
We
kissed
so
each
wrong.
other. We're supposed to be best friends, and now it's getting complicated. And it was the shortest kiss, y'all. I'm telling you, the shortest kiss.
But it was a great kiss.
Can you whisper like that?
Yeah. Try it.
Hello. Okay, stop. But it was the shortest kiss. Brian called me that night?
Was it that night?
I think it was that night.
It could have been. It sounds like me.
It was that night. And he asked me, I want to say, I can't even remember how many questions you asked me about that kiss. Did he like it? What didn't I like about it? What was wrong with it? Do you think I could have did more? Do you think I could have did less? How did you feel about that? Well, could we do more? What was more? What does more look like? That is Brian. So when we started to get even more physical, you could only imagine the detail.
I sent out surveys.
It was a dissection to make sure that we understood each other's bodies. We understood what we liked, what we disliked. So the openness of communication that we have,
It's always been there.
Is always been there.
But quick explanation. It is, first of all, it's cringy to hear that because I'm like, ugh, that was like you have this romantic moment and then completely unromanticize the moment by grilling.
I thought you cared so much.
I did care. I cared
loved
too
it.
much.
And you still are. You're very much still like that. Like if we do something new or try something different, you're like,
oh, we're going to have follow-up questions for sure.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. When we were best friends and all of a sudden started liking each other and now we have this beautiful first kiss, here's my thing. This is my best friend. So I want to go tell my best friend about this kiss that I had with this really hot girl. And you were the best friend and the hot girl. So I had to go back and recap with my best friend about being with this hot. You just happen to be both. So you got the friend conversation that followed the romantic
it was
conversation.
A mixture of
but it was
since
also,
I'm your friend, I can ask you all these
right,
questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is such a great thing to have, that friendship, because you can easily have those conversations. And it was not it wasn't awkward.
It wasn't awkward at all. It was, I know you. And it was cool because now I see it years later of just how detailed and how much you care about making sure that I'm comfortable and making sure that I can talk to you about anything, especially when it comes to bodies. And I've seen so many people that are married that cannot have this conversation.
And that's where I looked at it as, and it's interesting that other people don't necessarily see it the same way, but I looked at it as, if I'm going to spend the rest of my entire life with you, and I'm only going to have sex with you, nobody else, I would be condemning myself to prison if I didn't ask questions to be better at it.
Yeah.
If I didn't understand what you like, what turns you on, what turns you off, what did I do wrong? Hey, that was weird. Hey, that didn't feel good. We're going to just have 50, 60 years of bad sex because we didn't want to have a conversation?
And a lot of people, here's the thing. A lot of people, I feel like, will roll their eyes at the fact, well, you've only been with one person. How do you know that you're having good sex or not? Right.
They can roll their eyes. I saw your eyes roll back.
Right.
So. Because here's the thing. I know what type of sex we were having in the beginning of our marriage, and I can compare that to the type of sex we're having now. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, we weren't having good sex. We were having okay sex.
We were having okay sex. But now, maybe.
Different.
But I will say this. I listen to what people are experiencing when they're having sex. I listen to some of my friends that may have had sex with different, different partners.
Yep.
I listen to those things, and I feel like I can confidently say that I have good sex. And we were actually looking up, how many times do people have sex with us having kids, with us having, been together for
9 years.
9 years.
Well, married.
Married 9 years. We've had sex longer, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's probably another conversation, but we didn't make it, y'all. We didn't.
Yeah. But what did they say? What was that?
I think it said that 25% of married couples have sex at least once a week. 16% have it at least 2 to 3 times a week, and only 5% have it 4 times plus a week.
Where do you think we land?
We're probably in that 16 percentile, 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah. And I'm proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm
Girl,
also,
with how our lives are set up and scheduled, absolutely.
But here's the thing, and this is where I have conversation with women, because I get so tired of the stereotypical conversation about sex when you're around women, and probably when you're around men. Man, I be getting it in.
Man, be
girl,
quiet.
I mean, there's nothing wrong. If you are, you are. But it's like this, like, girl, I be putting it down, this, and it's very much not having real conversation that women have about life. The first year of marriage can be hard to those that are virgins. Understanding your body after having kids, understanding your body during pregnancy, and having sex during that time. I think that we can do better of making or having healthier conversations when it comes to sex. That maybe there's been times that we've gone weeks without having sex because I was having
surgery.
I was having a lot of different types of things that was going on during IVF that caused us to not be able to have sex. There are times that it could be difficult, and I want to bring a space for that.
I think it goes to the entirety of marriage, is that you change as an individual across the time span of your marriage. You are a different person now than you were when I married you. I'm a different person. And your sex life is like that as well, because the conditions in which you're having sex are very different. When you have kids versus when you don't. If you're traveling, if you have a job that travels, if you have, your schedule changes, like things change to the where your quantity may not be the same.
Yeah.
There may be times your quality may not be the same. So how do you navigate that? And if you're not having these conversations, if I'm not opening up a space for dialogue with my spouse about this, as circumstances change, my expectations may be the same, but the circumstance is completely different. And if I'm not having conversation about that, we are now completely on different wavelengths. And I feel like that's the place where now rifts are created in sex, and now you're associating a bad experience with sex now.
Yeah.
And that's where you and I have to go back to the emotional conversation. You and I have been extremely intentional to never associate a negative emotion with sex.
Yeah.
I don't ever want you to be in a negative emotional space towards me having sex, and then subconsciously associate that emotion with the act of sex, and bringing those two things together to where you eventually start over time despising sex.
Yeah. I heard that your brain is the most sexual part of your body.
Really?
Yeah. Because there is so much history. There's so much. The reason why your body remembers certain things is because of your brain. And especially, I would say with women, is you don't want to have a negative connotation to sex. And if you do, you're able to, I believe, healing and all that can come from it. But when it comes to being able to remember intimacy, remember the person that you're with, and the times that you've had are mainly good, your body remembers those things. And so I think that it's something that is important to make sure that you could at least try to have a good experience with your partner, especially you're going to be with this person forever. you never want to feel weird about sex. And we've had conversations of different types of touches that would bother me or make me feel uncomfortable. And we talk about that so that doesn't ruin, and not even say ruin a session, but not something that would be held in my memory.
How do you feel about having those conversations during sex? If something doesn't feel good, if something is just not doing it for you, would you just wait until sex is over? Or would you right then and there be like, hey, you're done, buddy?
I think I move my body. I position myself. There's times where you would position me and I would feel uncomfortable or it would like hurt or something like that. And I would position myself. I'll reposition myself.
I think it depends for me. I'll be honest. Because I don't think I would want you to get out of the mood if I were to critique you in the act. Now, if it's uncomfortable, like, all right, bro, it hurts. That's different. But if it's just like, it ain't really doing it for me. I may just let it slide and we just do that for a moment and then we switch and we switch it up because we're not just like doing the same thing for 10 minutes.
I think I would do something like that depending on what it is. Mainly, I feel like I can reposition myself or reposition you. Like I could just move you.
I love you being in the mood and staying in the mood.
Yeah.
Because it just makes the whole experience better. So if I can keep you in that mood,
Yeah. I could see that. I think I'm both. I think I don't like to be uncomfortable, so I will reposition you or me.
So why do you feel like overall people don't have this conversation? Because there are specific examples of couples that we know personally that have gone years in their marriage and have never communicated it. Or older couples who tell us they never talked about it for real.
I think it's because we have this pressure to do all of these things, be a certain kind of wife, act a certain type of way, and to or to not talk about it, or to talk about something that is so intimate, it feels uncomfortable and weird. And I think I think that there should be more people, and especially more women, that openly talks about this stuff so it doesn't seem uncomfortable. Yes, you're supposed to be able to talk about everything with your spouse, but this could be something where you think you're weird or you're crazy or you're the odd one. You're just like, I just got to stick it out because I've never heard anybody talk about this. I think women should talk more openly about situations that happen during sex or uncomfortable seasons that they had during sex, conversations that were very difficult with their spouse. That's why I feel when people talk about how many times they have sex, I don't think that's the core value of that means they're having good sex.
Yeah, I definitely think that people praise a higher number.
Yeah.
As if like, man, if y'all having sex 4 times a week, that's crazy. And it is. Hey, if y'all having sex 4 times a week, do you?
Dude,
and I'm happy
this is great. But what I care about the most is the quality of sex. Mm-hmm. Are you communicating your needs? Do you feel like every time is intimate, is like you're fully satisfied? And when I mean fully satisfied, I'm not just talking about you having an orgasm, because there are some women, I'm being honest, there are some women that do not care fully about having an orgasm because they just feel it, being in an intimate space is good.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, there are women that believe like, I don't need to have an orgasm to have a good sex session.
Okay, I get that. I get that.
Let me finish what I was going to say was that I want people to care about the quality of sex and making sure that they have a space to talk, communicate, to feel love, to feel intimacy. And a lot of that has happened outside of the bedroom. So
I have a theory, though, that it can be as simple as they didn't start their marriage off communicating about it, and they just got into a pattern, a habit of not talking about it.
Yeah.
And then 10 years later, 15 years later, here we are, and we still haven't talked about it. And I don't think it's fair to be like, it's been 15 years and y'all never talk about it. It's like, if you established a way of doing things in your marriage early on, that's just the way that you continue to do things. I can see how you just, this is how we are. This is what we do.
Yeah. And that's really sad, because I feel like if that's one thing, there's many things that you're not talking about.
Probably.
Yeah. I was talking to Brian the other day, and I felt very proud of the fact that we actually do have a consistent sex life still after 2 kids, period. And I feel that our sex is quality sex. And I think it's because we really, really put intention into our marriage. Like none other. I feel like we are very intentional. We have a amazing support system. Right now, we are doing this podcast, and our kids are at my mom's house. Like
every Friday.
we have an amazing support system. But outside of that, we care a lot about making sure that our connection, and not just our connection physically, but our connection in general, stays intact.
Yeah, I think that we also have opened ourselves up to be critiqued without taking like personal offense or being defensive. You know, there's been times, I think, obviously, where I may have been a little defensive or a little hurt or whatever, but I'm willing to have those conversations and risk, excuse me, and risk the hurt or risk the, you know, offense or critique or whatever you want to call it, in order to become better for your spouse. Because to your point earlier, I want to please you. And if my goal is to please you, I can't do that unless I know you. And I can't do that unless I know what you like. And again, we're in it for the long haul. So we were talking about the other day, we were talking about kind of our history with the conversation of sex within our family dynamic. So how do you feel like the way that you were raised has affected your mentality in having these conversations now?
I think it's twofold, because my parents were very, like, when they were married, they were super affectionate. Like, my dad would like slap mom's butt, and they would like kiss in front of us, and it would be kind of weird. But we didn't say anything because we didn't know what to say. So we just kind of like, it was awkward. But then on the other hand, my dad never had the sex conversation with me, but he had it with my brothers.
Why do you think that is? Well,
I know why it is.
Well, it shouldn't have been your dad, right? It should have been your mom. Did your mom not have it either?
No. But my mom, I think she thought my dad was going to have all these conversations with us, but he didn't. He would, I feel like he was very open, like intimate with my mom, but it wasn't I don't know. I felt like it's a mixture of being very open, but also not wanting to have the conversation.
It's probably just because you were his daughter. And
I'm the only girl, so it was very different. And I also think with that, I came to be very open about having conversation about sex. And maybe because I was always curious about it.
I was like, you are very open about this conversation. You kind of always have been. And I get that your parents were open with like their affection, but I'm still trying to figure out where that came from. Because I will say both your brothers are not like you. Both your brothers are not like super open about having sex.
I feel like I'm about to say Armand is pretty open. My youngest brother, Art, no. Art is, I feel like he does, like, I feel like he's comfortable with me to talk about certain things, but I don't think he's like super comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, we've talked about things before, but he's not like super comfortable. I think I have to warm up to talk about it.
See, the funny thing is, Lexi has changed me, first of all, because
I think I changed your entire family.
You definitely changed the whole community. When I grew up, my parents were not super affectionate in front of us or in public. We might see a peck on the lips here and there. Right? It was not that type of environment. Also, my parents did not have the birds and the bees conversation with me. I think they had it with Nathan, who was my older brother.
I think they had it with Matthew.
And I think they had it with Matthew.
That's so weird.
Why is it the middle children?
We're both middle children, so that's weird.
Oh, the disrespect. We get left out of everything.
That's not true.
I used to struggle with middle child syndrome, but I've overcome it.
I did not.
I overcame it. So we didn't have the conversation. I remember asking them questions here and there out of curiosity, but we never really had the full conversation. And growing up, I definitely did not want to talk about it. It was with other people. It was not like it was taboo. It was told to me that it was taboo. I was so focused on being a virgin, and that to me, that meant you don't talk about sex, because talking about sex could lead you to giving up or, messing up. And then when I met you, I think I slowly picked up on your openness to have the conversation, and it started to open me up a little bit. And we started talking about how we would, be in the future or whatever. And that probably led to things that shouldn't have happened, to be honest with you.
I think there's other things that led to that, but
Probably as well.
I have had conversation with many people. I was actually used to having conversations like this with guys because I only had a lot of guys as friends. So I talked to guys and asked them questions. So that never would have affected me.
So you don't feel like the conversation like turned you on?
I wasn't interested in you like that when we were talking about it in the
That's
beginning.
true, because we were just friends in the beginning.
I had no thought. Like, I think a lot of times because we were in the church, we think that way. And there is a level to that. I'm not trying to say that there isn't. But then there's people like me that have had multiple conversations about sex, and it did not affect me at all.
I also think that
That's just not my thing that turns me like, oh my gosh.
For me, I think that there was such a buildup of not talking about it, not being exposed to it, that when there was an ounce of exposure, it was like, okay, I'm curious now. And curiosity overtook, but not just curiosity, but it just felt like there was a bottling up of, I don't know what you would call it, but
yeah,
there was
it's
something.
like you start, like immediately you start thinking about it because it's been bottled up.
And now I'm focused on it.
Now, of course, when we actually started talking and we started to feel emotions towards each other, then yeah, now I'm thinking about it because we're talking about it. But when we were friends, it didn't affect me at all.
So how do you feel like, okay, that's conversation between us. We were boyfriend, girlfriend / married spouses, right? How do you feel about people, especially this can get dicey in the Christian community, but having open dialogue and open conversation like we are now with the public about our sex life? Is that a taboo conversation? Should we not be even having this conversation right now?
I think that we need to have more of it. And because of what I said earlier, I think we need to have more of it. Now, that goes in, this kind of took me on a rabbit trail, but I don't know if you're down to talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. This reminded me of just how people view conversations with their husbands and just in general, how people are with their spouse. Like, they don't want to talk about their marriage at all to anybody. They don't want to talk about issues. They don't want to talk about anything. And then even when it comes to single people, they don't even want their single friends around their relationship.
Oof.
I was like,
That's a whole, ugh. That's so interesting to me.
It is. And I am a person, you guys know one of my best friends is Janae, and she's single, and she's been around my whole family. She's around my whole family all the time. Like, we hang out all the time, and, she's really close with Brian. I personally don't have a problem with that at all.
It's almost weird to have it even think to have a problem with it for us. Like,
Yeah.
just the way that we function in our relationship and our marriage, but then also the dynamic of the relationship with Janae, that is almost just, it is strange to think, like, why would we be weird about that?
I mean, even the church sometimes talks about how I shouldn't talk to her about sex because she's single.
I strongly disagree.
I was gonna say, I was gonna
I
ask
do.
you, do you disagree with that?
I do. I strongly disagree with that. I think that it is about how you expose people to things. And I think, and that can go across the board. This is probably a whole different conversation, but for me, I think about, as a parent, how are we going to bring Aza into a world and expose her to the things that she's going to encounter at some point, drugs, alcohol, and having that conversation with her. How are we going to expose her? Are we just going to keep her in a little shell and pretend like it doesn't exist?
Yeah.
And then she has to figure it out for herself? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
We have to have the conversation, and having the conversation does not mean that all of a sudden she's going to be drawn to that thing. How we frame the conversation, and also the culture of our home and our love for her and our care for her, I think all of these factors are going to create an environment where just because we talk about something doesn't mean now it's the forbidden fruit that she's just going to have.
Yeah.
I just don't believe that. I don't believe that for single people, when they talk about sex, it makes their lives so much more difficult to not have sex. It exposes them to the beauty of it in the timing of it, in the
Yes.
purpose of it. And in
in our
fact,
marriage, and the beautiful marriage that is
Right.
happening because we're talking about it. They can see it. They don't have to be out here in these streets. Maybe they'll see that, waiting for the right person is worth it.
and you know what? I've been single in a long time. So I can only speak about singleness so much.
Yeah.
There's like a level where I'm just like, I've been with someone for a long time, but I
Yeah.
do believe that if you see the value and the nature and the true potential of what it can be and why you only want to have one partner, I think it would fuel people to do the right thing.
Yeah. Agreed.
But back to what you said. So you said that a lot of women wouldn't even want their man to be around another woman at all. We have had single people like Janae or whoever sleep over at the house in a guest bedroom and things like that. Now, maybe we're going to get some backlash for that. We probably will.
I know people be like, girl, what? Oh my goodness, I can't believe. Like, I know somebody that said they will never let their friends stay the night at their house because their husband is in the house. And I'm confused. I'm like,
Do you think I'm sneaking out in the middle of the night to go downstairs in a basement to mess around with your friend? Are we at that point in our
here's
relationship?
the thing. This is where I'm at. And if you think maybe I just trust my man too much, I'm too confident myself, has these things happened in the world? Yes.
Absolutely, they have. It has happened.
But I just know who I am, and I also know who Brian is, and that's just not. And also, I know the people that I bring around. I'm not just bringing any woman around. My husband, this
is not an open door policy.
It's not an open door policy. These are my best friends, and for them to not be able to have a place to stay because there is a man in the house that I'm married to, I think that's a little strong for me. Why do you think people are concerned about that? Why do you think people wouldn't want their single friends in the house? They can't stay the night.
Someone's not being trusted. It's either their friend or their spouse.
Or there's insecurity, I feel like.
Or they don't trust themselves with why they don't trust other people.
Yeah.
There's some level of mistrust. You can't.
Or you feel like the rule should be, especially for Christians, you shouldn't bring temptation into
I was just
going
to say that. Like, it's tough. As I'm talking, I'm like working through it in my mind of how I feel and like what my stance is. And as I'm talking, I'm like, I do also strongly believe that the reason why you don't give in to situations because you don't put yourselves in situations.
Yes.
I do believe that as a staple of my life.
What is the definition of putting yourself in a situation?
Right. And I think that's where it does somewhat have to come down to a case by case basis. So as much as I'm like, man, that's crazy that women would think like that. At the end of the day, I'm kind of stepping back and I'm going to almost backtrack a little bit on my stance where it's like that our dynamic is not the dynamic of everyone.
Yes, very true.
And to preserve their marriage, that might be something they have to do.
Yeah.
To make sure that temptation doesn't come in, to make sure that there's no open door whatsoever for anything to happen. And you know what? Kudos and better that than the opposite.
You be too open.
Better that than you too open and you do find yourself in a situation where
That's true.
This is a bad thing. So I kind of been backtracking a little bit. I just know for us, it doesn't need to be that.
Yeah.
For us, having Janae or someone else in the house, in the basement, in a guest bedroom, completely separate from us while I'm sleeping with you, that is not an open door.
Yeah.
That's not. It's not for
not.
us. But that may not be the case for everyone else.
Facts.
We've enjoyed having this conversation. We like talking about things that are, somewhat uncomfortable to talk about because I think it's conversation that needs to be had. So we appreciate you guys for tuning in, listening in, being a part of the conversation. So make sure you do look it up on YouTube and comment. We want to hear your conversation around this too. So we'll see you next time.
Don't forget to follow us on IG at _the co-life _ YT the co-life, TikTok the co-life, all things the co-life, and we'll talk to you soon.